All right. Good evening once again. Thank you for joining. Okay, so just to recap briefly on what we did last time. If I could remember, I think that was the first class, right? Was that the first class? Please confirm if the last class was the first class on the database management system, which is the SQL. Was that the last class? Mr. Victor, please kindly confirm if that class was the last class or the first class rather, whether it was our first meeting. I can't hear Victor. I think you have to unmute yourself. Please kindly unmute yourself.
Okay, I don't know. Yes, that was the first class.
Okay, so if that was the first class, it means we have just explained what SQL is all about, and we'll also talk about how to set up our system in order for us to run SQL query statements. And that led to the installation of a server, because I told us that SQL is a server-side programming language. It means it is a language that must be established on a server. So the server is just like the application that makes it to work or that empowers it. And then we'll also talk about an interface, which we also describe as a development environment for writing and executing SQL query statements. That was how we got to what we have on the screen, which is the workbench. Then after that, I taught us how to set up a development environment file, which led to the creation of this. I believe you have yours. So I'll just quickly click on it and then walk us into the queries interface where we can start with the language properly. So you can as well click on your setup file to have access to the same interface. So what we are going to look at, I remember that I've also explained to us the environment structure of the workbench. And I told us that the workbench is actually an emulator, actually software that is designed to provide us a development environment for SQL. So which means that on this platform, we can write and execute SQL code or query statements. And I also told us that there are other interface or platform you can write and execute SQL, such as Microsoft Studio, a lot of them, but SQL is SQL. What you should be more concerned with should be the query statements. You can actually deploy them across different platforms. So having said that, we'll look at, start with Dbms. What is Dbms? What is database management system? So that is where we are starting from. What is database management system? And if I can remember, I know I've already explained this interface. We know what this section is all about. Just to be sure that I've explained that. I've walked us through how you can switch from the administration to your schema, where I told us that the word schema also means your table structure. So all this you are saying, sorry, they are your database structure. So which we are still going to work with more of them in this section. So let's start by understanding what is DBMS. So by definition, we can say DBMS is a software that manages and interacts with database. It is a software that manages and interacts with database. So the key word here is database. So I'll be using comments in SQL to explain certain things to us. So let me start by teaching us how do we denote comment here in SQL, just like we have it in Python. So comment, like we have already established in Python, in programming, comments are generally used for code explanation in order to explain your code. They can also be defined as a non-executable statements. The programming language is not meant to execute comments. All right, so how do we write comments in SQL? Comment in SQL is simply writing 2 hyphen space. That is comment. So which means that whatever that comes after those 2 hyphen will be treated as non-executable word code. So to start with, like I said, we are looking at we are looking at what is DBMS. So DBMS stands for Database Management System. Database Management System. And like I said, it is a software that manages and interacts with database. So the question now is, which of the software, if I ask you now, Mr. Victor, if I ask you now, which of the software we are currently using to interact with this database? Remember, I just told us that all these are database structure. So which software are we using right now to interact with them? Let me get a feedback from you.
Workbench.
Thank you very much. Workbench. So now, remember that the Workbench is a framework that is being empowered by what? The MySQL what? Server. Now, what is the purpose of DBMS? The purpose of DBMS is, number one, to store data. Number one, to store data. Number two, to retrieve data. The word retrieving data means calling back records that are stored within a database. So as we continue, we are going to learn different SQL query statements for executing some of these things that I'm talking about. They also have updates data efficiently. So these are some of the purpose of DBMS, so that we can store data, we can retrieve data, and update data efficiently. These are the core purpose of this software called what? The DBMS. So just to summarize, what are the key functions? The key function, number one, data storage. Number two, security, query processing, and backup and recovery. So this is actually the main purpose or the key function of the DBMS. Now, you can see that when we define the DBMS, we talk about database. So we need to understand what is database. What is database? So we can define database from different perspectives. So let me just give us a simple definition of explaining what is database. So like I told us, I'll be using comments. So in case you are writing, what is database? What is database? So let's split it into two. This is actually a combination of two words that form what we are about to define. Let's look at the word data itself. The word data means information in this context. it means information. I know we were taught probably in secondary school that data are raw facts. But in this context, we can see data as what? Information. Now, the base there means storage, where those informations are what? Stored or collected. Is called what? Database. And that is the whole essence of the sometimes we call it Dbms. Remember when I was explaining from my slide, I was using what? Dbms, which means relational database management what? System, because the emphasis there was on the tables that forms the structure of your database. So now we understand what is called database. Now, there is what we call SQL query statements, because right now we need to understand what it is before we proceed. So we look at what is, I hope you are documenting, what is SQL query statements. What is SQL query statements? Now, in that class, I remember that we explained some keyword concepts of SQL, where I talk about the database itself, the table, the column, and the row. And the last thing we discussed there was query, to remember. And I told us that the word query in database management system is used to explain the process of taxing the system to do something for you. So when we say query statements, in other words, these are commands or statements used to task the database to do something. So for example, we're going to start by writing a simple MySQL or SQL query statement for creating a database. So which means that we are going to leverage on some of the SQL keywords. And SQL keywords, these are commands that are already built within the language. So we, at some point, we are calling this command and adding what? External words in order to form the complete statement. So I just needed us to understand what is database, because that is the next thing we are going to learn now. How do we create it? Because like what you can see here, all these are database. In other words, these are different storages where you can store a record through tables. So, but first, we need to learn how we can add our own here. So that is the first thing we want to look at. For us to do that, so let me say the first task is create SQL database. So what is the syntax? Remember, I told us that we have to pay attention to syntax. Syntax matters a lot because the syntax defines the pattern, the format, how the code is to be written. So just to highlight for the sake of those writing, so the syntax for creating database is that you use the database keyword, which means what? Creates. So it's either you write it in capital letter or you write it small letter, it is to still be what? Acceptable. So create. So the create is a keyword. Remember that very day, I switched from my slide that most of those commands, the best place to explain them is when we are carrying out the practical, just like I'm doing right now. So the create is a keyword. Then another word is database, is a keyword. Then followed by the name of your database. The name of your database can be school database, for example. school database. So let's say a school DB. I can abbreviate it to what? School DB. Let's say this is the name of the database. And each time you are done writing SQL code, please always learn to add what? Semi-colon. I hope you are following. Let me get a response from any one of you.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one thing is to write. Remember that the reason why we install Workbench is to offer us a development environment which should be able to what? To write the code and execute the code. So what we have done right now, we have only written the code. So how do we now run our SQL what? Statement. So this is the SQL what? Query statement, the whole of this line, because this is the line of code that we are currently using to task the language to do something for us. And what are we asking the language to do for us? Is to create a database named what? School what? That DB. Now, to run your code here, because you are using a user-friendly interface, we are given button to click on that we run the code. And like we explained the other time, once your code is run, you are going to get an output that clears you whether the code was successfully what? Executed or not. So now let me explain the difference between this and this as two available buttons for executing your code. As it implies, look at it there. Execute the selected portion of the script. So which means that if I have multi-line script or code written, but right now I'm just having a single line, and I want to probably highlight some area or about 2 or 3 lines only within the entire code and execute just those 3 lines, then I'm going to use this option. So let's look at the next option. It says execute the statement under the keyboard cursor. What is the keyboard cursor? This very one that's blinking. So if I have other code written, if I click on this, it means that what? Any code that is under it or on that particular line only will be executed. So now, but what about if you are using a different environment like Microsoft Studio that may not give you probably a direct button like this? There is a conventional way of executing your SQL code, which simply means you press what? Control and what? Enter. That's a shortcut on your keyboard. Control and enter. That is whether you are using any app that is not providing you buttons like this, just press Control plus what? Enter. That is the general shortcut for executing SQL. I hope that is taken. Mrs. Oyiko, so hope you are following. Please let me get a response.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now how do I know that? How do I know if my SQL statement has been fully or correctly what? Executed? You can see it here. There is no error. And it says what? One row what? Affected. Now, the next thing we want to acknowledge or see is that we want to see this name, School DB, mentioned here. So if you look here right now, you can't find it. It is not appearing right now, but it has been created. For us to make it to reflect here, we just refresh here. So once I refresh, you can see that what? I should be able to what? To see the database added here now as what? School DB. So it converted it to lower case. So that is the first task. That is the first task. Now, the second task is that how do we use the database? That is the second task. Like I said, I'll be using comment. How to use database. Now, using database means how do I select the particular database I want to work under? For example, now we have several what? Database listed here. So how do I tell the language that, okay, out of this list of database, this is the particular one I want to work with. Currently, how do I know which one I'm working with? The one that is highlighted like this. So right now you are in customer by default. We want to switch to what? School database. So for us to use that, there is a syntax. The syntax is you simply type use and then followed by the name of the database. School DB. School DB. And then of course, always end your code with semicolon. So if I press enter, you see that what? The selection has shifted from customer to what? School. So I want you to do the same thing. So create this and then use it quickly within 2 minutes. Create your database and use it. Everybody, you can do the same. Once your own is ready, please kindly notify me so that we can proceed to the next topic.
So, hello.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, go ahead now.
Okay, my connection is showing no connection established. During that time we are activating PyCharm.
Yeah.
You asked me to disconnect one thing in SQL,
Yes,
so it's affecting it now.
Yeah, it's true. It's true because I remember we were trying to, and I told us that we cannot have two of them at the same time. What it means is that you have to install the server back. I think we left the workbench that very day. We left the workbench, but the workbench will not be funded until you have your server. So why you are getting that? Because the server. So what you would do is this. You try reinstalling the server only. Do you understand me? Victor, hope you are ready so that we can proceed. Victor, if you are ready so that we can proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so I will come on your screen later. Just make sure that you keep your work active. Now, we have just created database. Now, the next code we want to run is an SQL query statement to create a table inside the database. I don't know whether if it was your class that I gave an illustration. I think it's necessary for me to take that illustration now. This is the database. I'm very sure that should be your class, but let me just refresh our memory. This is the database. Now, you were taught in that class that the database is like the house that houses what? Different rooms. These rooms, they are like tables. The properties are directly stored in the rooms, though the rooms are within the what? The database. So which means that we do not store records directly in the database. Instead, records are stored in the database through tables. And that is what I want to illustrate now. So I can have this as my data what? Base. I can have it as my database. Inside this database, I can have different tables. Just pardon my diagram. Now, this can be a table holding, this can be a table holding maybe my sales inventory or student what? Basic data. Why this can be this table one, this can be another table holding maybe the student what? School fees. So which means that after creating your database, for you to be able to populate it with record, you have to create what? Table. And that is the next task. And the whole of this is to teach you one thing. One thing that if you claim you understand SQL or database management, or you want to become database administrator, like at the end of this training now, you will end up becoming a database administrator. I'm not teaching us this now based on data analytics. Yeah, at some point we work with data, but the training focus is not on data analytics. This is a training that will prepare you to become a database administrator. That is, you know how to design database, you know how to work with the records within the database. So with this illustration, you now know why we want to look at how to create table. We have created database. So now we need to understand something. I want us to understand something. So within so we must specify under which database we want to create a table. You look at that structure that I just wiped out now. We have a database. Under it, we have a table. So before you create your table, you must use a database. That is the reason why we wrote this code, which means that the table I want to create is going to be created inside this. How do I know? Because if you come here now, I want you to observe this. If you come here now, you can't see any arrow attached to this table structure. But let me open this table now. Let me open this database. You can see arrow here attaching to this one. But when you come here, you can't find it. So that is to tell you and I that this database does not have table yet. But this one has table. That's the reason why you have this arrow. Now, we want to add table here. So what is the syntax? There are buttons here that can be used to create database within a second. We also have a button that can be used to create table within a second. But that is not my objective because you are expected to know how to write the code from scratch. All right. So now the next task is creating table in the use database. Creating table in the use database. Now, this will also involve its keywords. Like I told us, you cannot speak SQL without leveraging on the keywords. And the way we teach you how to work with this keyword is what I'm doing right now. So far, so good. I can boldly say that Mr. Victor now understand what is create as one of the SQL keyword, and also database as another SQL keyword, followed by use. So I have used three SQL keyword, and I'm going to use another one. Remember that these are query keywords. These are words we use in taxes. So depending on what you are taxing the language, that will determine the keywords to use. Right now, we want to create table. So we are still going to use the word create as a keyword. And then, of course, we are still going to use table as another keyword. Then followed by the name of the table, just like the way we named our database. And the name of the table is going to be students. Students that are table inside school database. So I'll say the name of it is students. And then the structure of your table is that you have table attributes, and then table ID. So how do we declare that? You now open a bracket like this. Just open the two of them at the same time, and then add semicolon to be on the safer side. And then you come in here, then open it up like this. Because for you to define your table structure, you have to declare the field name. And declaring the field name will also involve the data types. Now, and as I'm going to be using the data type, I'll be explaining. Data type will have been a topic first. But because we are coming from Python, we are already familiar with this data type. because we cannot actually program without what? Using data. And we should know the rules that are associated with the usage of each of them, which I am going to be explaining alongside as we create the table. So what I've done right now is just writing SQL what? Keywords for creating my table. And the name of the table is students. Now, student table, what we want to create is just like this. It's just like this. Just like this. This is the structure. You are coming from Microsoft Word. This is the structure. So that you understand the language I'm going to be using very well. This is where you are going to have your ID. The ID will be what? For the first row, where you have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And then maybe since it's a student database, I am going to have a column for what? Their names. So name will come here. So name of the student will come here. And then I'll also have another column that will carry their age. So it's just a simple table. So I'll give you the complex one as an assignment. That is the standard. Students will take home the harder one, and teacher will take the simple one in the class, because students have more time. Now, let's see, here is the what? The courses the students what are offering. The space. And then, of course, you can have other ones. Now, this is where I am going. While you are creating this what attribute, these are the attribute 1, 2, 3, 4. They are called what? The table what? Attribute. So a table structure in SQL explain the attributes, then the serial number, which are called the ID. And then when you are declaring these attributes, you need to capture in mind the type of data that will be populated in the column. And that is why if I declare this one, I will name this one what? Integer. Remember, all the way from Python, we are taught that integers are what? Let me get the response from Mr. Victor. What are integers?
Whole number.
Whole number. Numbers without what? Decimal point. Because all the numbers that will be mentioned here, they are going to be whole numbers. So I'll say what? Integer. Names of the students. Those ones are going to be variable character or text. So you define it. And then you need to also define the length. The length. The length simply means that if you are putting 1 here, you are putting 2 here, what is the total? But in the case of ID, we are going to set our length to be what? Auto increment. Auto increment means that, yes, as at the time we are creating the table, we created, or probably we are creating just 3 rows. So what about if by tomorrow they enter beyond 3 records? What should happen? So we will program that it should continue to increase itself. Then when we get here, what will be our length? We can say our length is 255 or our length is 100, which means that what? Any name that is longer than that number, if it is 100, any name that when you count the character in it, once it exceeds 100, then SQL will no longer what? Take the remaining ones. We cut them off. So now with all this said, now let's go into the development of the table. So inside my students table, I'll start by declaring the headers first, which I also call the attribute. So the first one, I'll say what? I have what? ID. All right. And the data type is going to be what? Integer. So how do I specify that? I will just space and type what? Int. Int. That int means what? Integer. It means integer. Int. Now, remember, this is the attribute name, while this is the data type. Then the length, there are 3 things you must ensure. the name of the attribute, the data type of the attribute, and the length. So I'll space and say the length is going to be what? Auto what? Increment. Auto increment, that means that what? It will increase automatically. All right? Then you add a comma. So with this, you are through with the first heading, ID. You have defined the heading name to be ID, and the type of data to be integer, and the what? The length to what? Auto what? Increment. And you go to the next line after adding a comma. The next information I want to collect is the student's name. So I will say name. That is the attribute name also. Now, I will also define the type of data to be what? Varchar. Varchar means what? Variable what? Character. Then the length, I'll put it in the parenthesis bracket as, for example, 100. And then, of course, I will add a comma. So like I explained before, this simply means that if you try sending any name to this column name that exceed what? 100 what? Character, yes, SQL will take the first 100 character and then throw away what? The remaining one, not that you reject it. Then I'll add a comma. So I want to declare another attribute and its data type and its length. So just take note of the format. Because right now there is no constraint. There is no constraint. Now, the next one is the courses the students offer. The courses they offer is the next attribute. Then what is the data type is still what? Variable what? Character. So which means that what? This information can vary. And then what is the length? What is the length? So the length, let me just make it what? 50. All right, so I will add a comma because I'm still declaring the table what? Attribute. Then I'll go down again. The next one is the primary key. The primary key. The primary key is a unique identity that differentiates one table or that defines the relationship between one table and another in a database. So you must understand what a primary key is. So which of the header you want to set unique, which is what? The serial number. That is the one that there shouldn't be any value that is repeated twice. That is what makes it what? Unique. So if you have one assigned to a row, that one should no longer be assigned to what? Another what? Row. So we'll set which of the column we want to use as our primary key. So I'll simply type what? Primary key. And then I'll set it to what? To be the column ID. The first one, ID. That is the one we want to set as primary key. Remember, unique. It means that all the values that will be here, they must be what? Unique. Please let me get a response, Mr. Victor. Hope you are following.
Yes.
Okay, so now after this, we have to what? Remember that we open up the what? The table here. So now let's execute and see whether we have our table created inside the school database. So I can just highlight all of this if I want to execute with this. I run it. Now you can see that what? Also approved. So we have successfully created a table under what? Now, if I refresh this now, you see that what? It now has what? The navigation, which means that there is now a table inside this database. So I'll give you 5 minutes to get to where I am. This time around, you will share your screen and then just see what you have done before we proceed. In fact, just share your screen. Just share your screen so that I can see what you are doing. But if you have not copied this, you still want, just snap it, because I'll switch off from mine to your screen now. Can I? Have you gotten the code or you are still writing?
There.
Okay. So just share your screen. Let me see your activity so far. So, madam, just try and rectify. Just make sure you are writing down your code. That place you are putting semicolon, you are supposed to put a comma. That is why it's showing you those errors. It's comma, not semicolon. Semicolon is for the last or the closing parenthesis. Yes, all these places is comma you put, not semicolon. I'm still seeing some semicolon. Good. Okay, I think you are good there. So try and execute. Let's see. What is this saying? This, can you switch to your schema? Let's find out whether you have used the database correctly. Switch from administration to schema. Switch from administration to schema. No, remember the server side now. Switch. I explained all that to us the other side. You can see schema. If you can just see schema.
I'm
After,
trying to the
okay,
Zoom is
okay,
covering
something
my
is
screen.
covering it. Okay. I just want to be sure that you are in. I can't see the database yet. You have not executed that database where you created the
Look at
database.
it. Look at
Oh yeah, refresh, because I can't see it listed.
this line where it shows that I've created it.
Yes, but we can't see it yet in your schema. Can you refresh? There is a place where we refresh the other time just to get the database listed. No.
Yeah.
Come down. That place that have arrow like this. By this side where you can see schemas, in front of schemas. No, you have left it. Go back to your schema structure. And maybe if
I've
you
refreshed.
find it, okay, I think it's added now. Okay. So now what is the error now? It says what? Primary key. Yes, primary key, you are not supposed to put what? 50. Put ID. You have to set the particular attribute that its values will be unique, which is what? ID. So let's run the code again and see if we get that result. Now, that is the last one. You do not need to put comma there. You don't need comma because that is the last one. That is the last attribute. Just remove that comma. Perfect. So these are some of the debugging aspects of SQL. Now run it now. Let's see. Run it now. Let's see.
I've run it.
Okay. All right. So I believe everything should be okay now. Let me go back to my screen
It's still
quickly.
flagging.
Okay.
It's still flagging.
It's still flagging it. Are you sure? Okay, let me come back to your screen. I thought we have resolved that. Coming back to your screen. What is this still flagging? Let me see. To implement variable character. I think everything should be okay. Can I see that down part where it's complaining about it? Can I see it? What is actually the error description? It says what?
Cannot create database code GB.
No, I think this error was the previous one. I think it because I can see created database 2DB. think this error was the previous one because your code is correct.
Typing wrong now. It's bringing the same thing. Error
Yeah.
107.
One what?
This one just look at the time of this thing. This one I highlighted and I just did it again, and that's what it's
But the
showing.
database has been created. Now, what you would do is that, can you highlight the entire code and use that option, that one that allows us to execute multiple code, to execute everything again? Let's see. Create table student ID. Your code is correct. Your code is correct. Your code is correct. Okay, so what we are going to do is this. Just make sure that you write down the code structure, so you can just open another query later and run it again. I think everything is okay. So now this is what you are going to do. You can stop sharing. Let me show you what to do to be sure whether you are at fault or not. What you can stop sharing. Can you see my screen now? Okay, so now what you will do is this. Since you are still having that error, because you can see that your code is correct. So since you are still having that error, you can just go to what file and select what new query, and then use that database again, and then paste this and see whether it's going to work. But let me just, if you can try it now, let me give you a few minutes to rectify that. Just quickly do what I just said now. Let's see. I will know whether the problem is from that particular query. So I'm waiting.
The copy and put again.
Yeah, yes. I don't want you to copy everything. Just open a new tab. The only code you will write now, just
Yeah.
because we have created database, just write use this in that new tab. Let's see what you have. When you run it, do you get any error? Is there any complaint indicating that the database of this does not exist? Do you get
Let
any
me
error?
try.
That is what I want to confirm. Because the previous interface was telling us that database does not exist. So if you run it in this new tab and it's able to execute, then the problem is from that place. If you look carefully, we'll see where the error is. Alpha. Alpha, are we good?
I'm still typing it.
Okay.
It worked.
Okay, so that is to say that the error is from that particular. So let's continue. At least that is how you can debug some of these things. You are still on my screen now, right? You can see my screen. I think you just want to stop sharing.
Yes.
Okay. So now we still have some things to do. Now that we have added the table, the next SQL query statement we would like to write is to add record to that table. Because if we write an SQL statement to call out the table, let's quickly write that first so that we'll be sure that there are no record inside the table you just created. And remember what I told us, We created the database because we want to hold record, want to hold data, and this record cannot be directly passed into the database. Instead, have to go through what? Table. Now we have created an empty table, just like you just created an empty container here to receive what? Value. But let's write an SQL statement to check first whether we have value or not. So let me say what? Write an SQL query statement. So check numbers of table in a database. Numbers of tables in a database. How do I know? So if I am given a website and there are so many tables holding different records, how do I even check first? That's the first thing. So I am going to write this keyword. So I was going to say what? Show is a keyword. So this is another keyword you are learning now. Another query keyword. Show, I will say, remember that you must first of all what? Use the database to show that you want to count or you want to see the list of tables under the database. But because I am still here, that is why I'm not writing use database first. So which means that I am writing a code that will tell me how many tables are inside what? School database. So I'll say what? Show tables. The table, there must be S there. And then I run it. So it will display. Can you see that? That under table in school DBA, we have just what? Students, and there is no record inside. So if you expand this now, you see that what? You have no record. All right? Now, if we want to populate this table with records, we want to put some record there. That will be our next task. Our next task is how to insert records in the created table. So how do we add record? All this we are using the query language to speak all this. Now, the syntax for doing this, remember, I always emphasize syntax. That's the secret of learning and mastery a program. So the syntax here is that we're going to use another keyword here. So number one, I need to acknowledge the name of the table. That is why running that code that give all this is very important. So with this outcome, I have already know the name of what? The table. To be what? Students. Because I'm going to be mentioning it. So I will say insert, that is the keyword, insert, because I'm just writing record inside the table. Insert into, that is another keyword. Insert into, then followed by the name of the table, which is what? Students.
My own show table is not working.
Your what?
The show table.
Show table is not working. Let me see your environment. Let me see your environment. Please, can you share your screen quickly? Okay, it's coming up. Where are you writing it? Okay, under the comment. You are doing this in the new tab that you just opened, right?
Yes.
show tables. Now click on that line and run only that particular line. Use that that second option to run it. Let me just see something. Yes. Say create table students already exists. Your code is, I don't know why this your development environment is so. So your code is correct, show table. Okay. Okay, you have already displayed the table now. Is it not the command?
Right. Thing just came up. I put the for me to really display this one.
Okay, okay.
But when I
So
use the first,
uh
it brings
okay, it might be that maybe okay, since you have gotten it, so let's continue. All right, so now we are still constructing SQL query statement to add record into the table we just created. So we said insert is an SQL keyword, into is another word, keyword. Then we have to mention the columns in that table, and they will now supply the corresponding records. That table has 3 columns. The first one, we are not going to count ID. ID will be generated automatically. We have no business with number 1, number 2. That will create the sum. So the actual headings or attribute that we have, they are name, age, and cost, which are just 3. So the first thing is for you to declare them inside this parenthesis bracket. So once you have declared them, the first one, like I said, is name. Then use a comma to separate it, age, use a comma, and then cost. I think it's courses or cost. Make sure that you align it with the right spelling. So after this, then I will have to what? To go down. I will have to go down. So I will have to go down. So the next thing is for me to declare the record according to the numbers of those headers. So I will just create this first. This is for the first one. So this one, this particular bracket is for creating the first header record. And if you follow the arrangement, you have name, you have age, you have cost. So the name is a string. Remember from Python background, is a string. So I need to what? Put it in what? In string notation. So I'll say, let's say what? Prosper is the name. Then comma, while you are inside, the age is, let's say what? 60. Then comma, then followed by the last one, the cost, let's say computer science. So computer science is a string. So you add it. In fact, let me use single string or string. Computer science is a string. All right, so I'm not declaring this record for the first attribute. Then I will just add a comma here and go to the next line. So the next line, I'll copy the same format. In fact, just to make my work easier, let me just copy Ctrl+C and then come after the comma, paste. So I just need, let's say 3 to 4 records. So I put a comma here. So I will just go and edit, paste, add a comma here, then paste, add a comma here, paste. So let's say I'm working with this. Now, I will just go and edit maybe this to 70, this to 80, with this to 90. Just change this name, so maybe Rita. Good. So once I'm done with this, remember that we have the last one you have to what? Put your semicolon in it. Sorry. The last one you have to put semicolon in it. That is the very last one. So why we added comma? Because we were still what? Writing all this. So let's execute and see if we have our code running. So I want to see why we are getting this. Say what? Prosper is not valid at this position. Prosper is not valid at this position. So sometimes you can have this and the code can still be correct. So you just go and execute it first. Let's see. Okay, so insert students name this error. You have an error SQL syntax. So we must also know how to debug here. Check the manual that correspond to sometime it might be on the platform, but let me just see what is complaining. Let me see what is complaining. I think we are right with our syntax.
Space.
Space, right? Yeah.
After prosper system.
I'm not sure. Is it here? I don't think that is the error.
Yes.
But try it from your end, write this code and see whether it will work for you from there while I know that. Let me try and debug it out. So just take the code because I'll leave the screen now. I want to quickly check it and see whether we can get